Ilkka Salmi is the EU's top man when it comes to counter-terrorism. He recently took up the role of coordinating member states' response to the security threats facing the bloc today. His appointment comes at a time when right-wing extremism is on the rise and online propaganda is a growing concern. Just some of the issues that we discussed with him at the European Council in Brussels.
Ilkka Salmi, thank you very much for joining us on the Global Conversation. Now, first of all, we just started a new year. In 2022, how would you define terrorism?
I would say that we have to still keep in mind that the terrorism exists. If we consider, for example, the let's say, radical Islamist views or the jihadism, the ideology is still there, even if the caliphate has been defeated in Syria, and we have to, be prepared for that.
You take up this role at a time that terrorism seems somehow away and a bit low in the agenda. Has the threat just escaped the political agenda?
Unfortunately, the terrorism threat is constantly there. I mean, we have to say that it's perhaps elevated. We can't really say that it's gone away completely. Of course, issues like, especially from the European point of view, the pandemic might have had an impact. I mean, people don't move around as freely as they used to. One thing that I probably also would like to highlight is, of course, which is a good thing, is the resilience. We have seen in Europe small-scale terrorist attacks, very unfortunate ones, where lives have been lost. Nevertheless, the societies have actually managed to recover.
What is, in your view, the current situation when we talk about terrorist threats in Europe and the pressing issues?
I would say basically actually three things. The first one, jihadism or the radical Islamist threat is still there. Secondly, we have seen indeed the right-wing extremism, especially the violent right-wing extremism, to be more prominent in Europe. And then third issue is, of course, the development of technology. And the new technology plays a role also in spreading hate speech or terrorist content online.
Now, in the past, several European nationals are claimed to have joined terrorist-linked organizations. In your view, is Europe still attractive for these organizations to recruit people? And what could be the root causes of such recruitments?
Well, what we saw, let's say, back in 2012, 13, 14 especially, or 15, linked to the crisis in Syria and the formation of Daesh or ISIS back in those days, really tempted some Europeans leave and join the ranks of those terrorist organizations. Theoretically speaking, it still exists in a way. We have seen the developments in Afghanistan. It's certainly one question that we will follow.
Last quarter, migration became again a big topic in the agenda. In your view, do you think there's a link, as some people argue, between migration and terrorism, or that's not the case at all?
Drawing a line, kind of a direct line between migration and terrorism is far from the case. At the same time, and having said that, we have to keep in mind that if there is a great movement of people around the globe or the world, the terrorist organizations might try to use that in their benefit in trying to infiltrate individuals into it.
We're here in Brussels, a city that has been touched by terrorism in the past. In your view, what are the priorities to make Europe a safer place?
We have to make sure that the balance between the issues such as privacy on one hand and security on the other will be covered, so that we make sure that our legislation allows our law enforcement agencies to work efficiently, but we at the same time to make sure that the new technology is available for these agencies.
Now, moving to a different topic on the pandemic, which is a pressing issue as well. A recent Europol report referring to 2020 stated that terrorist-linked organizations are taking advantage of COVID-19 pandemic to exacerbate hate speech and hatred and online propaganda in that sense. What is being done to fight this and to address this issue, which has the potential to become even bigger in the future?
There's actually a very timely issue to tackle these challenges. The so-called terrorist content online legislation will come into place. This is a European legislation, which basically the bottom line being that the service providers and the social media platforms are obliged to remove terrorist content which they see online, based on the under reports by member states authorities, and also it goes through Europol. So basically within 1 hour, that sort of an information or messaging should be removed. And I think this is a very, very good development over the last years, that we have managed to pass this sort of a legislation which will come into force now next summer.
Now, these days we also see a lot of speech against vaccination online in the context of the pandemic. Do you consider that this has the potential to be used by right-wing extremism to sort of degenerate and to conquer more followers, let's say, in this sense?
I don't see that we would ever label that as a terrorism for the time being. Having said that, of course, there has been some concerns that, marginal part of those who are very much against could radicalize again through that, and perhaps seek alliance from different groups, be it the violent right-wing extremism, for example. But for the time being, we still have to keep in mind that the freedom of speech and expression is still there, and the right to demonstration.
As tech evolves, it seems so terrorism is evolving. And how do we tackle all of this?
First of all, of course, we have to, put lots of efforts on the preventive work, trying to make sure that, people don't radicalize, they don't get these views, especially when we speak about Europe, but of course globally as well. Secondly, we have to make sure that the law enforcement agencies, the security authorities have A, enough resources, and B, a legal framework that they can operate in.
Is online the weapon of choice for the future? And how would you deal in that sense with fighting cyber terrorism?
I absolutely believe that that's indeed the way forward. It will not replace, of course, what will happen in the real world, because that's where, unfortunately, all the terrorist incidents would have a psychological impact. But at the same time, the new technology, keeping in mind that it's extremely useful for you and me, but at the same time it also gives new tools to those who want to do harm. And that's exactly why we have to make sure that we keep up with the technological development.
In your view, is there a sort of one-size-fits-all approach, a pan-European approach that can be done?
If we discuss about the threat, that certainly varies among the different EU member states or different countries in Europe. So in that sense, we probably can't speak of one kind of a monolithic approach.
Ilkka Salmi, EU counter-terrorism coordinator, thank you very much for joining us on the Global Conversation.
Thank you.